We spend so much of our lives trying to rearrange the outside world so we can finally feel better inside. We pursue success, relationships, recognition, possessions, and the next accomplishment, only to discover that fulfillment keeps moving farther away. But lasting peace may not be something we can acquire. It may be something we uncover. Today's conversation invites us to stop running from discomfort, sit with the full experience of being human, and discover what becomes possible when we turn our attention inward. Because the crises we fear may not be the end of our story. They may be the portal to who we are becoming. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today, I am speaking with someone who knows a lot about these moments, Tom Cronin. Tom spent 26 years in finance markets as one of Australia's leading bond and swap brokers. He discovered meditation in the early stages of his career when the anxiety and chaos he was experiencing had hit a crisis point, and it completely transformed his world, both personally and professionally. Founder of the Stillness Project, a global movement to inspire 1 billion people to sit in stillness daily, Tom is passionate about reducing stress and chaos in people's lives. His ongoing work is transformational leadership coaching and corporate training has seen him working with some of the top companies in the world like Amazon, Oracle, Harvard Business School, Qantas, UBS, and Coca-Cola. Tom has 6 books published and produced the film The Portal. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me along. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
As am I. I just maybe a few hours ago finished watching The Portal, which you wrote and produced based on your book. And I have to say, I'm still processing and sitting with it. I was moved. I was greatly moved by the stories. And I wonder if we just start there and we go backwards with your story of how you got there. But tell everyone a little bit about The Portal and its intent and how it has unfolded.
Yeah, beautiful place to start. The Portal film explores 6 real-life human stories that have all been through crisis. Some physiological, some emotional. And we took these stories based upon themes of potential global crisis that overlaid on top of that. And the healing and transformation of their crisis came through the use of meditation. And there's lots of different ways we can heal through crisis, but we wanted to convey the power of meditation to transform us, but also that crisis isn't something we're a victim of. It's something that is actually an opportunity for an evolutionary leap. And this was inspired by my own personal story, which we can get to down the track. But in brief, my story was one of deep crisis, major mental health issues, and then coming out of that with a meditation practice that completely transformed me. And so the film was made to inspire people that no matter where they are and who they are, no matter what their background, what they've been through, that we all have this alchemy potential, this possibility for transformation. And we wanted to showcase the power of meditation as a tool for that transformation. So hopefully people walk away with this motivation of integrating meditation on a daily basis, but more importantly, to see that everything in life is just this wonderful gift of opportunity for some form of growth and evolution and way of seeing the world in a richer, deeper, beautiful way. And yeah, it's a film that some people love and some people struggle with, but I'm glad it moved you.
Oh, I'm interested with the struggle, although I can imagine maybe some of that. You have a story of PTSD, combat veteran. You have a rabbi who had a stroke and has shut-in syndrome, and which unlocked an inner world that he is grateful for and feels as a gift. An athlete with a career-ending injury, a person who is part of supporting refugees in the Middle East, and showcasing how many external situations there are, and then everyone's individual, unique internal situation. And for me, the magic is how all of it can be overcome, might not be the right word, or healed, overcome, by going inward. And as you say, in the sitting in stillness. And I guess maybe to the critics, which is always, I think, a good place to start, not only in a way of just understanding that everyone has their own experience, is, yeah, how can one transform by going inward in chaos? And I guess this probably takes us back to your personal story of someone who probably wouldn't have believed it was possible and are so grateful that it was.
We're starting to learn very slowly as a species, even though the information has been around for quite some time, some would say thousands of years, that our internal world has a direct influence on our external world. Whereas most people buy into the idea that the external world has a great deal of influence to the internal world. So they're trying to change and shape and manipulate their external world, their career, their partner, their hairstyle, their wardrobe, so that their internal world can change its state, feel better. But what we're starting to learn is that our internal state has a correlation and influence on our external world. It helps shape based upon laws of attraction, magnetism, and Joe Dispenza is obviously doing a lot of work around this. As we've heard of Think and Grow Rich from the 1920s, and we've had The Secret, and this is something that is becoming more and more apparent and more aware, and more something that we can play with and utilize. And so how does that internal world change and help us get through crisis? I know there's a current tendency for a lot of us when we're in difficult times to either do talk therapy or take drugs. But what we're finding is that if we are to go inward into stillness and silence, we start to find solace beyond the thinking mind, beyond the world of what we call duality. That's the relationship that I, the ego, the subject, is having with the external world, future, past, or present. So if you were in, as Buddha, the US Marine, as we were talking about in the film, who had PTSD, he was in a war type situation. He had PTSD from that. But when he went to his inner world through the meditation practice, he found stillness and quietness. And not only that, he found a deep peace. And that peace, when we cultivate that consistently time and time again through regular daily meditation, we start to make that become our foundation for our experience of life. So our action then becomes a place that's coming from peace, from fulfillment, from love, from joy. And action from fulfillment is very different than action for fulfillment, because most people are going into action for fulfillment. And that is the flip that we need to make as a species, I think.
And we're not programmed to do so, right? We're actually programmed for quite the opposite. We're programmed, socialized to go outside of ourselves, to look outside of ourselves, to buy, to drink, to consume, to, right? All of these things, these dopamine hits, in the corporate world, which one of the other individuals in the movie had to learn too, that it was hollow. And again, I guess we'll take you back to your story of someone who is a trader, basically with the Wolf of Wall Street. Talk about external reinforcers and metrics and goals, awards, trophies, right? And what that ended up doing to you, like it does to so many others, and how actually doing the opposite of seeking outside is what saved you.
Yeah, absolutely. if we look at some of the three biggest companies in the world, Amazon, Apple, and IKEA, it's again that if I can extract something, buy something, consume something, then I'll be happy. And as a broker, that was so deep in our culture. It was a very hedonistic, very narcissistic, egocentric culture, which is just a deep pleasure seeking. So more money, more success, more drugs, more drinking. This was all a big part of the culture. And I wasn't meant to be in the broking in broking industry. I was meant to be doing journalism at Macquarie University. I was going to write articles about capitalistic greed in Time magazine. That was my dream as a you know bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 18-year-old. And I was excuse me, backpacking around the world, listening to Susie and the Banshees and the Smiths and reading Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. And lo and behold, I needed some money to fill in some time before I went to university, and landed a job on a trading room floor. And my eyes just lit up when I saw the excitement, the thrill of what was going on. And that, again, is how compelling the pleasure seeking can be conditioning into us, when very quickly all of those aspirations of mine completely ironically got swept away by this current of an industry that was ripe for hedonism and pleasure seeking. So, I went deep down that rabbit hole, and this is the thing that over time my body started to send signals to me saying, this is not good for you, being up, all hours of the night, drinking drugs, no sleep, then back on a trading room floor the next day, and back out again, drinking drugs, back on the trading room floor. Then my body started to show immense levels of wear and tear, which were symptoms, which was the catalyst for change. But of course, I kept ignoring those signals, which led to a major meltdown at the age of 29.
And then seeking, right? Seeking more. When you look back at that time, how do you look on it? Are you grateful for it? Are you mixed about it? Like, how do you see it in the course of your life and what your mission and passion and purpose have become?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'd probably have two answers. One from a spiritual, enlightened perspective, which is it's all perfect and it's exactly as it should be. And admittedly, the experience and the texture and the color and the arc of the journey that I went through puts me on stages, and it enabled a film to come out of it, and a book to get published, and podcast interviews to be had, because there's a colorful texture of a story there. He woke up enlightened, and now he's enlightened, and now he's teaching meditation. That's not much of an arc of a story. There's no hero's journey in that. We want to watch a film where the hero almost dies and they eventually get the chalice and come back and save the world with it. So I can see the merit in it. Of course, there's a lot of still on a Tom personal ego level remnants of guilt and shame and regret that there was a better way of being in the world than, and I could have made better choices along the way. It's funny, I remember Jeff Bezos being asked, how did his company get so successful? He said, we just consistently made good choices. And I've made a lot of bad choices and a lot of dumb choices. But the thing with decisions I've learned is that most decisions and most choices start as a good choice, as a good idea. But it just, that journey sometimes changes along the way. And it's like, oh, that didn't actually end up being a good idea. So sometimes you think you're making a good choice, but it's not a good choice.
Mm-hmm. I can appreciate where you're coming from, and I do see and understand the duality of there's like the human egoic response, and then the spiritual one of I think of Wayne Dyer saying something like, how I know that everything that happened for a reason, because it did, right? And there's or whether it's Buddha, right? You're talking about Buddha, spelled differently from one of the characters in the movie, but of course, the Buddha, who also had a life where there was a lot of consumption, right? And a lot of it does seem to me in many of our journeys, the stuff that we are not so proud of or wish we would have done differently seems to be such an integral part of our story and our path.
Yeah. I was at a funeral once, and I was at the back of the service, and I had tears in my eyes, and I was crying. And dear friend of mine had passed, and there was some sadness there. And I paused for a moment in reflection and inquiry at how rich life is that I can have this experience as well. And it was such a beautiful honoring and accepting that all the sensations that we go through as a human, and there's only so many, from grief to happiness to joy to enchantment to sadness to shame. There's just like a color of the spectrum of the rainbow. And of course, there's shades and infinite shades within those, but there's only so many colors within the rainbow, the spectrum. And I realized at that moment that this is what life is. It's a collage of sensations that I've been through, a collage of experiences that I've been through. And they're all like little jigsaw pieces that make the whole picture a beautiful, rich tapestry of my existence. And I was honoring and recognizing and almost delighting in the fact that I was having this experience and filled with gratitude for it. And I think that is a hard thing to do as a human, because we're always trying to deny the painful experiences or sensations and crave and seek out the pleasurable ones. But I think if we're able to cultivate a sense of conscious awareness itself that is able to independently witness you having these experiences rather than being owned by the experiences, then allows us the right and the opportunity to experience them for what they are and just sit in presence with them and be present with that experience rather than denying ourselves it.
And I think that's you just got to the essence of what mindfulness and meditation is, in that we can sit in the experience and find, I think, maybe both a detachment from the experience and then also a sense of peace within it at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. The world is trying to numb ourselves from having the full human experience. And even my spiritual practice, part of that is, how do I transcend the human karmic experience? How do I get into a spiritual existence? And there's almost like a denial, even in spiritual practices. In the non-spiritual community, it's like, let's just medicate you, or let's just self-medicate. Let's just distract ourselves, because God forbid we ever feel, anxiety or shame or guilt or rage or anger or frustration. So there's a large part in the non-spiritual community trying to deny that sensation. And then in the spiritual community, particularly myself included, there's a, how do I transcend it? How do I go beyond it? How do I detach from it? And I love the work of Michael Brown. He's got a book and a program out called The Presence Process, which I really subscribe a lot to. And that really helped me, because as a spiritual person doing spiritual practices, whenever I had those sensations, I was like, transcend it, just go beyond it. Didn't be the divine and don't be the human. And with Presence Process, it's about just observing it and being present with it and witnessing it. And interestingly, when we just sit with it, not the story that created the sensation, not the intellectual drama that is correlated to the sensation, but purely come into presence with the sensation. And then you'll find that it's just a sensation. It's just some biochemistry. Like, what's the big deal? Just be with it.
I've heard you say it's not who we are, it's what we are. And please share what you mean by that, and how we can try to embody this idea.
Mm. So the Vedic tradition, which I'm a teacher of, a beautiful, deep, transcending meditation, that recognizes there are 7 states of consciousness that a human can get to. And the first 3 that all humans go through on a cyclical basis every day is, they have the thinking state, which is the identity as the thinker. Then there's deep sleep, which is an unconscious state, which we go through every night, where we become completely unconscious and we don't even know that we're sleeping because we're just not there. And then we come into dream state, which is when there's thoughts and sensations, and we emerge again as the ego in the body, but we're asleep, but now we're still having thoughts. And then we move through those 3. But in the 4th state, it's been recognized in the Vedic tradition. There's this experience called Turiya. Turiya means the fourth in Sanskrit. And Turiya is this state where you're no longer thinking, but this time you're awake. And what happens is we start to identify and realize that there's a conscious awareness itself that is not influenced by the thoughts, and it's not influenced by the body or the emotions. And it's always there, just as the blue sky is always there, whether there's clouds in it or not. And so by being able to access Turiya and start to cultivate and stabilize its existence in our own thinking, physical, emotional state, we now have these 4 dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So Turiya is the unbounded, infinite, non-changing aspect of reality that permeates and pervades all existence at all times, the omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence of consciousness itself. And so the what am I is that. The who I am I, is I'm a thought, I'm a physical body, and I'm an emotion. Now, these are constantly changing. They're constantly changing in relationship to the world. They're in duality. But I have these 3 vehicles, but I'm also, as well as that, I'm this, which is conscious awareness itself, which is a non-personified state of awareness.
For those who are new to meditation or have not meditated or don't believe they've meditated, I find that many people just don't realize they do it in different ways. It seems big. It seems elusive. It seems, well, to get to a state, this kind of state, I must have to be a guru. I must have to be, sit for every day for an hour over time to get to this place. And I know it's important in your work to demystify that for people to know that no matter how long you do this, it can be elusive at times. And at the same time, one can get there when one intends and sits with intention.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a little bit more than that. To give a little bit more texture and color, is that it depends on the practice. So, for instance, if you lived your life and there was only ever clouds in the sky, you would assume that the sky is always grey. And no matter whether you used a pogo jumping stick or a hot air balloon, but you could never penetrate the layer of the clouds. No matter what vehicle you used, it could never get high enough to be able to get through the other side of the clouds. You would only ever assume that the sky is grey. But if a plane came along one day and said, "Do you want to jump in this? We're going to go on the other side of the clouds." And in that plane that was able to take you on the other side of the clouds, you go, "Holy moly, the sky is actually blue." So it always was blue. It's just that it's always had this thick layer of clouds that are in between you and the blue. And so certain meditations will take you beyond the clouds to the blue sky. Some meditations, most meditations won't. So if you're listening to Matthew McConaughey read you bedtime stories in the Calm app, that's a beautiful meditation, and it will definitely relax you and it will definitely help you sleep. So it does have relevance if you're doing a guided meditation by Anthony Robbins or someone else, Tara Brach, then you're not possibly going to transcend and go beyond the thinking mind and the meditator. So some meditations are there to calm you, relax you, and help the meditator feel better. And that's great. But the ones that I use specifically are for transcending, and that is to go beyond. To transcend means go beyond. I was teaching a lady who had lost her child. She lost her child a few years ago, but she's still deep in grief. And I was teaching her an hour and a half ago on Zoom, and with her mantra and her practice. And she said when she came out of the meditation, my whole body disappeared and it felt like I was nowhere but everywhere. And that's what transcending is. It's going beyond the clouds and the form of the clouds into the expansiveness of blue sky, the infinite field of just spacious, Joe Dispenza calls it the void. And so students will generally go into that space within their first few days of meditating with me. But it does depend on the practice. We use a mantra that takes the mind beyond the thinking space and beyond the emotional and beyond the physical. And so it's a really important experience for a human to have, I think.
I'm thinking of, well, we started with alluding to some people who are critical. So I'm thinking of someone saying, well, why would I want to experience that?
Mm, it's a good
Why
question.
would I want to transcend?
Yeah. The quality that one arrives at when the mind is no longer fluctuating. Okay, so in transcendence, what happens is the mind enters into a space called samadhi, samadhi. So Samadhi. D means intellect, and sama means the same. It's where we get our word the same. So the mind is the same. It's not moving, it's not changing. It's the same, and it's in a complete state of peace because it's fulfilled. It is completely immersed in an ocean of bliss at this point. The reason why the mind is still is because it's fulfilled. And it's fulfilled because it's satiated. It's satiated because it's found bliss, the source of all bliss. Now, the mind is fluctuating, and the person who might be the skeptic saying, why would I want to do that? I would ask them the same question. Why would you want to go to the movies? Why would you want to drink alcohol? Why would you want to have children? Why would you want to have a relationship? Why would you want to go to IKEA? Why would you want to watch Netflix? And the answer is the same to all of those questions because they're seeking fulfillment. All action is motivated in the quest to find fulfillment from the action. And so what we're doing is we're moving our attention from outcome-oriented fulfillment, which is deriving and extracting, commoditizing fulfillment from the action, into a self-referred state. Because outcome-oriented fulfillment is very unsustainable. And I'll give you an example. Firstly, my own personal experience, I was very successful and had a very affluent life, but I was deeply unhappy. But I had a client contact me before they were a client. A friend of his said, you should talk to Tom. And he had sold his business for $350 million, and he'd bought a $50 million mansion on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. He'd filled his garage with 5 of his luxury cars. He had a wife and 3 kids, very successful man. And there was nothing more he could do to reach the pinnacle of human success. There was nothing more he could do to extract fulfillment from outcomes. And he contacted me. I said, what's up? Why are you reaching out? And he said, well, this is where I'm at. This is what I've got. But I don't understand this because I've never been more anxious, depressed, and even angry than I've ever been before. And that's because he'd done everything the world had told him to do to find fulfillment. But we're just not going to find it there ever. We will never reach, through relativity, that's the relationship with the external world, a state of deep fulfillment and contentment. It's just not possible. The only place to find it is in Turiya, in that inner state of bliss. And I love one quote, which I'll finish with, by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, a beautiful teacher of the tradition. He says, no one needs to suffer in life. There's an ocean of bliss within everyone. It's just that we don't look there. We look at the billboards and the Amazon, but we need to go inward, which is really what sort of started the conversation with. What's the point of stillness?
Mm-hmm. And that's what Rabbi Ronnie found when that was the only place that he was able to go. And he found an endless, it seems, an endless abyss, expanse of consciousness by which to swim in.
Yeah. Yeah, he was, to lose the use of his body, one of our most precious and valuable items. If someone said, would you give up your body or would you give up your sofa in your lounge room? You give up the sofa. Would you give up your body or would you give up your plasma TV screen? Give up your plasma TV screen. It'd be the last thing we'd give up, right? The use of our body. And yet he was the most enlightened person I've ever met, the most blissed and loving human being I've ever come across. Quite profound.
You've also said the crisis or the darkness is the opportunity. And I have reflected on this a lot in my own life, personally and professionally. And I find myself believing it and utilizing this idea in my work, whether with my counseling clients or my coaching clients. And yet I find the same personal challenge when I'm in the midst of a darkness or a crisis. by how to really embrace and detach and lean in the same way that I do when I'm on the other side of it as the guide.
It's always harder when we're doing our own work, isn't it? It's funny. I'd be teaching my clients and running retreats and coaching people, and as I'm speaking, I'm like, take note to self. Remember this. But I went through a difficult time only recently. And this is the dark night of the soul that we're going to go through many of them, whether you're doing spiritual practices or not. It's the process of evolution of, in the Sanskrit tradition, Vedic tradition, we recognize Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, that there's creation moments, there's maintenance moments, and then there's destructive moments. And they're all part of the mechanics of evolution. And I was going through a bit of a challenging time, and it was really one of the clearer times that I was able to, with deep gratitude and clarity and absolute trust and certainty, know that this is working for me. And beyond this is a greater degree of consciousness, a greater degree of awareness, a greater degree of refinement in me as a human being. And I remember communing with God, and some would call it the divine or your higher self or whatever you want to call it. But I was communing saying, thank you for this, because I know that this is exactly what I need right now. But it's brutally painful at the same time.
It really is. And I think that's the challenge, is to accept it and embrace it and even have appreciation for it in the moment, because it's usually in hindsight, right, where we look back and we see why something happened and how that has impacted our life and maybe why we needed that, or maybe we don't know why we needed it, but it all leads. And I'm glad you mentioned the higher self, because that is something I wanted to ask you about, because I believe we do all have this higher level of consciousness and guidance, and many people call it different things, and yet it is available to us. So please talk about how each of us can tap in to this higher self, this higher awareness, this divine, and how much it can enhance. I feel like it enhances our experience of life, but it also enhances who we are or what we are.
Yeah, I had this wonderful conversation with a cab driver once. I was listening to the Quran. We were talking about the omnipresence of God. And I asked if he subscribed to an omnipresent God, and he said, yes, of course. I said, then that would imply that it's you. Oh, no, 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 no. I said, but omnipresence can't exclude us. And this is the hardest thing for us as humans to come to terms with, that if we subscribe to an omnipresent intelligence, divine, God, higher self, then it can only imply then that its qualities are us and we are it. It's just that the degree to which we've become aware of it. Esther Hicks, who channels Abraham, says that the degree of suffering in a human is the degree to which they're aware of where their higher self is and their lower self is, and the gap between the two. So if their lower self, which is their vehicles, the mind, body, and emotion, becomes completely infused, aware, and aligned with their higher self, then they're in this avatar enlightened state with full awareness of the true nature of reality. But the gap between the awareness of those two and the experience of those two will be the degree to which there is immense levels of suffering. So I think, firstly, the one way I found to access the higher self, which is this, how do I describe it? An infinite field of intelligence. It's all creative potential. It's all lovingness. It's, we call it the knower knowing the known, source of knowledge. I find meditation, Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation, to be very accessible pathways to what already is. Breath work, I think, helps. Plant medicine, I think there's many modalities, Qigong, yoga, healing. There's so many different ways, lots of shaman work that will get us into this experience of this source. And the integration of that into our daily life is the next step, which is really a work in progress for us all, because the infinite field of intelligence, which humans would give the word to God, the divine or higher self, is a blissful, loving, unconditional, non-changing state, a permanent state. And the infusion of the permanence and impermanence into our human experience is such an important step in the process. But to start to realize that experiences that we're creating as an individual in seeming separation to that higher self um, is about learning that the higher self is us, helping us realize that we're the higher self and putting us through experiences so we can discover that we're not us, we're the higher self. And the higher self is actually working in our favor to make us realize that. And usually it does in a way that we don't get what we want, we get what we need.
I did have an experience that you just triggered a memory of experiencing myself or my higher self watching this self and rooting, in a sense, rooting for this self and experiencing, seeing both at the same time. And it was an expansive experience, and one that I try to hold on to. But as you know, I think this is where the importance of the meditation and the regular practice comes in, because when we are in our regular egoic human form, it's harder to hold on to this connection and this connection to self and connection to all in the context of this universal intelligence. I'm not sure if that all made sense, so please help me make sense of it.
Yeah, the higher self, God, source, or divine, is so subtle that it's formlessness. So it's the unmanifest, it's boundlessness, so there's no boundary to it. There's no form to it. So it's unidentifiable as far as the five senses. Okay. And the reason why we identify with ourselves as ourselves, because we're a form. We're a thought form, emotional form, and physical form. So we identify with forms. We're in a period of time where the animal kingdom, the humans, which is part of an evolved version of the animal kingdom, are very clearly identified with form. Cows identify with grass and water. Lizards identify with bugs. Puppy dogs identify with humans and milk and, toys. So we're all, as humans, IKEA, give me the latest furniture. Tell me what the Kardashians' toothpaste they're using. Get me a really good superannuation fund. So we generally gravitate to things that we can see, taste, touch, hear, and smell. Things that are forms, because forms give us pleasure. That's the world that we're currently in. And so the subtle field of the divine is so subtle that our natural attention doesn't go there because it's so subtle. That's why the subtle practices are so critically important for us as humans now, as we're moving into our next phase of evolution, to get out of that three-dimensional world and start to realize that not necessarily get out of it, to be in it, but to weave into the three-dimensional world a subtler reality as well. It's not one or the other, it's both. We need to have identification with the dense world of form and phenomenon, but also integrate and become aware of the subtle world that is formlessness itself. And this is the next stage in our evolution. And where I think a lot of religions are falling short at this stage still, because the world is still very much, for a lot of us, identified with a religion of some sort. And the religions, predominantly most of them, position ourselves as us here and that there. And there's a massive gap between the two. And what I think we're seeing a convergence of, even in some religions, so Sufism, Kabbalahism, if that's a word. My auntie's a Christian nun, but she's a very spiritual one. Is a lot of religions now closing that gap and infusing spirituality into the religion, which is a renaissance for religions, I believe. And I think that's the way forward for humanity, because once we realize that our religion is a spiritual experience to be had individually rather than a separate thing that we pray to as another intelligence that I'm not part of, then we start to realize that we're all interconnected, and all those religions are all trying to do the same thing, which is make someone become realized in their true nature. And we should have love and compassion for everyone that's taking that path.
Yes, and like Buddha in the portal said, and have, love and compassion for all. And this is one of the messages and one of the intentions of your book and the film is how going inward and cultivating this inner space, this inner consciousness, and this expanded consciousness is also the key to our human evolution. Like going within on one impacts the many. And I guess this is where we go to your very small goal of 1 billion people sitting in silence about, we know the power, it's measured, right? There have been plenty of studies that we can measure the change of energy when people sit collectively together or apart, and the impact that it has on our world.
Yeah, what inspired me with the Stillness project and the vision to get 1 billion people meditating daily is that one thing I noticed when we do start going into those deeper meditations and transcending an individualized small self to realize we're part of the higher self is the first and most primary thing that I find is that people start over time realizing they're part of a unified field, and that everything and anything that's in that field, which is everything, is an extension of themselves. And it's very hard to be mean and rude and horrible and vicious to an extension of yourself. It's not like you're going to pick up a hammer and hit your foot unless you really want to cause yourself harm. But most people don't want to do that. And so the extended version of ourself is other. And in those deeper meditations, we start to experience ourselves as other. And I think this is what's missing on the planet still to this day, after thousands of years of researching the process of corporate greed and wiping other people out because they're a different religion or different color skin or stealing in other countries' resources, is that we're causing harm to an extended version of ourselves. And I think that it doesn't make us perfect by meditating, but I think it makes us definitely more compassionate and kind because it's a byproduct of experiencing other as yourself.
Mm-hmm. I have found that is the ultimate experience of connection, to truly understand and see that we are connected to all, and whether we decide to step on a bug or let the bug live its short life, or the tree that we are trimming or cutting down, or the person that we are just locking eyes with, whose day can be changed by a look of love and compassion and value. It gives daily life purpose.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing that emerges out of that, I find, which is the thing pretty much we're all seeking, is love. And it's now no longer becoming something that we extract from other. And we hear songs by Michael Bolton or Mariah Carey, I Can Never Live Without You. This idea of duality in love, that if it's taken away from us, then we have nothing, which is an old status quo for humans that we're slowly starting to let go of and evolve beyond, in that love becomes an expression, an extension of our inner state. And that when we realize we're the uprising of love, then all we're looking for are places for that love to go rather than places that we can extract it from. A very different model. And I think that's the way forward for humanity, is to realize our loving nature.
Yes. As we wind down, what you're just mission and passion and purpose driven. What do you want people watching or listening to take away? If they could take one thing away, which you might have just said that one thing, but another opportunity, a spark that you'd like to leave with them.
Our day comprises of 24 hours, and every hour has 3 portions of 20 minutes in it. That means that you have 72 20-minute pieces of pie in your daily pie chart that you're allocating to finding fulfillment. The first thing I would suggest is to look at your 72 20-minute allocated pieces of time and attention and ask, is it working out for you in giving you high levels of fulfillment? And then if it is, then just keep doing that. There's nothing wrong with whatever you're doing. If it's a life that you're fist pumping, hell yeah, I love it. But if it's not, then just take 2 out of those 72 and just take 2 20-minute segments out. Maybe doom scroll less, maybe less Amazon, maybe less Netflix. Whatever it is that you find aren't giving you the ROI, return on investment of your time and attention, to finding that inner love and inner fulfillment, inner peace. And just park some time aside for closing your eyes and learning the art of meditation, and find a teacher or use an app, whatever methodology you're going to find works best for you. There's no right or wrong. But I think that when we look at some of the most fulfilled people on the planet, let's just call them enlightened, and we take, if anyone has heard of it, the book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers, and he looks at people that were outliers in our society, came up with this principle, the 10,000 hour principle. And one thing we know about people that were excellent in their field, the Williams sisters, Tiger Woods, they allocated large amounts of time to doing this one thing. So one thing we know about enlightened people is that they've clearly allocated larger amounts of time to cultivating that state. And so what we're not suggesting is you go to a monastery in Tibet and start meditating for 15 hours a day. What we're saying is just 2 20-minute segments, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and just integrate a little bit more stillness, a little bit more de-excitement of the mind and nervous system, a little bit more time on the inward direction of our attention. And just over time, look at what starts to unfold. You'll find greater levels of peace, and life won't be perfect. Things will still turn to shit at times, but you'll have greater capacity to move through those times with less emotional upheaval.
We'll leave, you just led us to one of your quotes that I will read as we wind down. We become better humans and better at being humans dealing with day-to-day life. That's what we get, right? That's what we get with the practice.
Yeah. Life's still hard. We just get better at dealing with it, that's all. We can move through it a little bit more easily, even though it's still challenging.
Tom, please tell everyone where they can find your work, your retreat, the movie, the books, and all that you have to offer.
Thank you. I love Instagram. It's just a great platform for communicating with people and connecting. So Instagram is where they can find me at Tom Cronin, TomCronin. My website, tomcronin.com, again, where my retreats and teaching and programs are. And then they can watch the film at entertheportal.com, ENTER, and then theportal.com.
Enter the portal, people. I did, and I am glad I did. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom models for us grounded and embodied presence, showing us and teaching us how to sit in stillness, sit in silence, and the impacts that it can have on our experience of being human. Here are 5 key takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, lasting fulfillment begins within. We are conditioned to believe that changing our circumstances will change how we feel. But external success can only provide temporary satisfaction. Sustainable peace develops when we cultivate fulfillment internally rather than demanding that the world provide it for us. Number 2, meditation is not about escaping the human experience. The practice is not meant to eliminate grief, fear, shame, anger, or uncertainty. It helps us witness these emotions without becoming completely controlled by them. We can experience difficult sensations while remaining connected to a deeper place of awareness. Number 3, a crisis can become a catalyst for transformation. Painful experiences are not always evidence that life has gone wrong. They can interrupt old patterns, reveal what is no longer working, and create an opportunity for greater consciousness, compassion, and personal evolution. Number 4, we are more than our thoughts, bodies, and emotions. Those parts of us are real, but they are constantly changing. Beneath them is an awareness capable of observing the changes. Regular stillness helps us strengthen our connection to that steadier and more expansive part of ourselves. And number 5, a small commitment to stillness can change how we meet life. We don't need to withdraw from the world or meditate for hours each day. Setting aside even 2 20-minute periods can begin to calm the nervous system, increase emotional capacity, and help us move through life's challenges with greater peace and intention. That's it, everyone. Lots to ponder, to internalize, and to sit with in stillness and silence. We are interested in what you think about this episode, so please feel free to leave us a comment at Dr. Dan Peters on Instagram or reply to any of our social posts. Thank you for being a part of this amazing community, for sharing these conversations to those you think will benefit, for your 5-star reviews and subscribing. It really does make a difference. As always, we have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Amber Miller. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.